Barry Upton here at Cabbages and Condoms, just by the ocean. And I'm here with a great friend of mine, Tilly Rutherford, who was a bit of a legend, wasn't you, in the music business, late 80s. Tell us why.
Well, a lot longer ago than that, Barry, as you know, they've just been very kind to me. No, I've been around a little while. I started when I was very young. I started when I was about 5 or 6. So, as you know, I'm now in my 50s. So it's been that sort of time, where I've been. No, but yeah, probably the 80s was the best period, but the 70s was also great, and also the 60s, as you know.
But in the 80s, the late 80s, you had so many hits as part of a very famous record label.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be in the right place at the right time. But as you know, Pete and I, that's Pete Waldman, grew up together. And so we sort of started our careers together back in Coventry, and we had a little record shop. We used to DJ together, and then we both came to London at the same time, and both worked for Magnet Records.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And that's how you formed the kind of partnership together.
Yes, yeah, sort of. Well, we were both doing A&R and promotion basically, and he did a few bands like JLN Band and worked with other groups, Susan Cadogan and that, and I did like the Darts and Matchbox, because that's what I sort of like, rockabilly, and then Bad Manners, of course, which they were all very successful. Yeah. But we also had, like, as you know, Guys and Dolls and Alvin Stardust and Peter Shelley and all those, those 70s legends, as I call them.
But then in the 80s, it was Kylie and Jason and Rick Astley.
Yeah, that was sort of basically started, I guess. Well, we sort of went different ways then, Pete and I. He went to work for MCA Music, and Elton John worked for Rocket Music, and worked with a lot of bands like Lambrettas and that. And I went to PRT, so I worked on a lot of American product like Casablanca, Buddha, and all those labels, Sugar Hill, the Sugar Hill Gang, Rappers Delight. Yeah. And then in, I think, 1984, 85, Pete got together with Mike and Matt started making, and did their first production, which I think was Agents on Aeroplanes for RCA. Which wasn't a hit, but it was a start of, if you call it, a beautiful friendship of theirs, at the time. And then they were fortunate enough to get Dead or Alive.
Yeah, that's the one that I remember as the first one.
Well, they had done Hazel Dean before that, Searching, which was a big hit record for Barry Evangeli. And then CBS asked them to produce Dead or Alive, and I think that was the turning point, because You Spin Me Round became one of those big records of the year.
But then Kylie and Jason came along, and
everything
bloomed.
Well, Rick came first, because basically we didn't have didn't have a record company then. We just had a production unit. It was Stock Aitken Water, basically Productions. So Dead or Alive is a Stock Aitken Water production, where we actually signed Rick Astley to us, but because there was no label there, it was then licensed to RCA.
Right.
So basically, it's a Stock Aitken Waterman production, but PWL basically owned, but licensed to RCA.
And what was your function within the company at that time?
At that time, basically, cleaner. No, I don't.
T-boy.
Wait, I tell you what it was really all about. Pete had Mike and Matt there. That was it, and a couple of girls. There was only, just secretaries.
Doing all the production?
They were just doing production, basically. So there wasn't a lot to know about the music industry. So Pete, I was at PRT, and Pete says, well, why don't you come in and just help me out? Because I knew most of what you call the ins and outs of how you do things. Not all of them, because it's like there's loads of things to know about, like manufacturing, sales, promotion, marketing. So I basically went in there to help Pete try and establish this, before we set up the label ourselves. Yeah.
And what was around about that time, there must have been thrills galore. Because
when it's
I know what it's like to get a record in the top 10, but you having number ones and international hits.
Well, we thought.
You were really in the most successful company for a while, weren't you?
It's still the most successful independent record label in the UK.
Is
ever.
That true? Right.
Yeah.
How many hits did you? There's one year you had how many hits?
We had 9 number ones.
9 number ones.
So basically, for 6 months of the year, we knocked ourselves off the number 1 spot. Which is sad.
I guess only the Beatles have done that, really.
Well, I don't think they ever did it, but, because a lot of Beatles never went to number 1, as you know. So it was, phenomenal.
Okay, what I want to ask you is, what is your most memorable experience from that time? What is the thing that stays in your head and you go, wow?
I don't think I can say that on camera, but no. I tell you, this is wonderful. This is totally relevant, but it is relevant. Basically, what happened when we set the record label up, like Kylie and Jason were on the record label, PWL, this is a brand new company. So there's nobody in there with any experience of record companies. You know, if you go to RCA, there's 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So what I had to do, I had to find my friends who had marketing companies, find my friends who had promotion companies, find a distributor that I knew well, find a sales team that I could use, and find an outside promotion team that I could use to do outsource, basically. So they all came via me, and I paid them. So they weren't in-house. It was like they were consultants to us.
Yeah.
So when we first had our first #1, we made a decision we'd go away for the weekend. Yeah. The first weekend, Pete came with us, and we went to the Ferrari factory in Medina. Yeah. Looked round the Ferrari and drove Ferraris on the track.
Okay.
And had it was a terrible but a very expensive meal in some 3 Michelin star restaurant just somewhere near there. Anyway, that was that. We decided, the nucleus of us guys, like these promotion guys, that's my mates, that if we have a #1, we'll organise a trip. Pete's now out of the equation because he's over there, because we don't want him with us anyway. So about 8 weeks later, we've got another one. So one of the guys on the phone, well, where are we going? And I just have to tell you what, the first trip, one of the guys, a guy called Steve Mason, who you know, who owned Pinnacle, the distribution company, said, right, I'm booking this, we're going to Amsterdam, or Hilversum or somewhere. I said, fantastic, 2 nights. He picks up the tab for everything. We rock up there on the plane, and there are 5 Jensen Interceptors cars. I didn't know there was 5 left in the world. Waiting to pick us up to this bar, a friend of his, nightclub bar, opened especially for us in the afternoon. And then we went to another place at night, and I guess that's when you see what success is. And then about 4 months later, #1 again. So we're at the Georges V in Paris. We've got the suites all around the top floor of the hotel. And we're in the Harry's bar, then we're in this pub. So I think...
No, it's important to mark those kind of occasions, isn't it?
Because it's not
special.
just... I mean, the artists are having their accolades, so I guess we just took it on ourselves and had our own... saying, hey, guys, we've done a great job. So you can imagine in that year, when there were 7, 8 #1s, we were never at home. We just go, okay, we went here, we went there. Not only short journeys in Europe, you know, we didn't come here because we couldn't get the time to come here, but it was like 2 nights away, just as 6 guys who'd actually put all this thing together.
So immensely successful. But let's go back, because you're a big doo-wop and rock kind of guy, aren't you? Really, you've got a show that you do on radio called Doo-Wop and Rock. Yeah. And that is your passion, isn't it?
Well, I do, because I don't think anybody else knows about it. I think I can get away with it.
You know everything.
Well, I know little bits, but
you know the label, you know what's on the B-side.
I wasn't around, obviously, as you know, when they came out. No, seriously. Okay. People go, you know, how old is this Tilly? And I go, well, he's only in his 50s. I mean, but I did most of my knowledge I've actually gleaned later, you know, i.e. from when I was about 16 or 17, you know, that sort of time. But this was going on way before me, you know.
But you have a passion.
I like it, I think the real thing about doo-wop, I know you listen to quite a bit of it, the vocals are tremendous.
Oh yeah.
And the songs are all about love and happiness and getting married, and there's no...
Well, the thing then, there was no real technology, was there? I mean, there were some great microphones around and stuff like that. But
basically, it was one take.
Yeah, that's it. They're in the studio. It's a performance.
Yeah. I have an old friend called, no longer, it's called Hi Weiss, who's very famous. And he was one of the main men in doo-wop. He had a record label called Old Town Records, very famous doo-wop label in the 50s. Him and his brother, Sam Weiss. And he told me years later, he used to get about 20 of these street groups in every night. Give them 3 minutes, they go, no, 3 minutes. If one goes, he goes, you've got a deal. Yeah. You know, and they'd probably get $100 and that was it. Yeah. And then the record might sell $500,000, that's gone.
But you're right about the songs. The songs were brilliant, weren't they? And I know I've heard you talk about like the instrumental sections in the middle and that. Well, they're great musicians.
Well, it's predominantly sax breaks, if you notice. Very few guitars. It's usually a sax break, isn't it? And it's just like wild and frantic. You go, how do they do that? You know, it is fascinating. Yeah. I think somebody told me once, there's a group called the Spaniels, doo-wop group. And somebody told me they were the first group ever to have 2 mics, i.e. the lead vocalist had his own mic. It was like unknown.
Yeah.
You know, they're just always a bop in and bop out.
Yeah.
You know?
And I know you've got a favourite guitarist from that period as well, who played with Bill Haley. What's his name? Because people, I checked this out after you told me, and I was just so impressed.
Yeah, well, there's sort of two, but he's the main one. There's a guy called Franny Beecher, who used to play, but he played in a lot of jazz. He played in, I think it was Benny Goodman or Tommy Dorsey as a jazz guitarist.
Right.
Then he joined Bill Haley. He wasn't the original Bill Haley guitarist. Unfortunately, the original Bill Haley guitarist tragically fell down some steps and died, only like months before Rock Around the Clock was released. So he managed to procure Franny Beecher in, and I know I told you about him, and you listened now to it, and the guitar breaks are...
Well, it's one of those things where you just get carried away by the record itself.
Yeah, and you forget
But
about
it's
it.
not until somebody points out, yeah, but what about that guitar break in it?
Yeah.
And you go, actually, it's brilliant.
Yeah, and the other one is that I told you about was Cliff Gallup from Gene Vincent's Blue Caps, who's recognised as one of those great rock and roll guitars. And you listen to that, Race with the Devil.
Yeah. You go, wow. And it's like Chuck Berry's piano player. A lot of people wouldn't notice until you mention it.
His name, I don't know, I think his name's Jim Johnson, isn't it? Something like that. I'm sure it is, something like that. He's known as one of the most famous honky-tonk piano players
Chuck
of the time. Yeah, he played with Chuck.
This T-shirt is a Tilly special. He gets these T-shirts, John Lennon,
Chuck Berry.
And they're rock and roll T-shirts, aren't they? They're great.
And now you have a new one.
He always brings me one.
You've got a new one now.
I've got a new one with the Beatles with face masks. COVID, the COVID Beatles.
The COVID Beatles.
Okay, so I really want to know, what is your favourite moment in music history? You know so much about music, and you always know what label things were on and stuff like that.
Favourite moment, without any shadow of doubt, there's only one favourite moment.
Okay.
That is when the curtains opened at the Gaumont Theatre in Coventry and Bill Haley and the Comets came on stage.
Bill Haley.
Unbelievable. Well, I think for most people who ever grew up in rock and roll, that first moment of hearing that song, Rock Around the Clock, forget Elvis, and then don't forget Elvis, and don't forget Chuck, but the man who basically, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of people, he's the guy who started it. You know, Bill Haley was the king of rock and roll, I guess, and having, you know, fortunately seen him live.
Yeah.
But that, you know, it was just, I was only a little young, tiny boy, but it sort of sticks in my mind, and you go, because we didn't know anything, we didn't know where America was, did we, really? I mean, it was like, somewhere you never dreamed you'd ever go to America. As far as Thailand goes, you go, you know, Thailand, Siam, you would never heard of it, did you?
Well, you might have heard of it, but you didn't know.
Yeah,
a
King
lot
of
of these
Siam.
places you don't know where they are properly until you go there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So that is, I think that starts you in a life of music. If you hear something like that, you just go, wow. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay, all those artists that you had on your roster at PWL, who was your favourite?
Well, actually, signed to us, or ones we produced.
No, signed to you.
Well, Kylie, obviously, very talented, very underrated. Well, she's not underrated, but a lot of people think, oh, Kylie didn't sing this. Kylie sang everything.
I think over the years people have realised that she's got character in her voice.
Yeah, she uses it, and she's the consummate professional. You know, because she's been acting since she was probably 5. So when she first came to us, we did our first TV. She knows. She's a bit like me and you, professional. Every camera angle. You know, you didn't have to tell her. No, you know what I mean? She's one of, and Jason as well, because they're both child actors.
She could work the camera.
Totally.
Yeah.
Could look there, and know exactly where she was looking at any given moment in time.
Yeah. Because I think that's the mark of a great artist, is if they can tell the producer who's selecting the angles, like she looks into that one, and she's basically directing herself.
Correct. And so they loved having her on TV, because she's no problem, is she? They don't have to do all this with her. They say, okay, Kylie, let's go, you know, and that was it, but you know.
Okay, finally, you're in Pattaya, you love Pattaya.
Again.
I know, and you love coming here.
We're in the Cabbages.
Cabbages and Condoms.
That's a restaurant, by the way, yes.
It's got great food and a great atmosphere, and you're looking out at the ocean.
We're gonna have a cocktail. That's a Barry Upton song. Tropical Beach Cafe.
Well, it's always great to see you here in Pattaya, and look forward to your next visit. See you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Bazpop.
Cheers.
Cheers.